I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything.
All right, enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong? Disconnect.
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Thank you for that nice intro, Steve Clark. I am Dr. Ray Guarendi, the program the doctor is in. This is the Monday variant. Most of the time, this is what we do on Mondays. I look after, I address, I touch upon. I used to say I tackle, I accost the e-persons, but you can't say that. That's just violent rhetoric. It's linguistically insensitive. So now I just say, well, we share the e-persons, and they're not email, they are e-persons. Mail is rather a linguistic, narrow-minded expression. I don't want to do that. So we'll get to those in a moment. My producer man is Andrew Kruchek there in Ann Arbor, who co-produces this program with the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. My wife and I recently had an anniversary. And I was reading one of these marriage books. And they said, you want to commemorate your anniversary? What about going and doing the same date? The first time you met, the first date you had. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. So I asked Randy, I said, honey, what do you think about reliving our first date, where I took you on our first date? She goes, oh, that's sweet. She was hesitant. She was real hesitant. I couldn't understand why she was hesitant, but she said, I guess, Ray, I guess. So I did. So we went horseback riding. And that was our first date, was horseback riding. And at our age, we still enjoyed it. We still had a ball. We rode horses for probably about an hour, until I ran out of quarters. And so maybe that speaks of her hesitancy. A little exercise that I do in my office. Much of the time when events happen to people, those events, of course, have to be interpreted. And depending upon how you interpret the events, what you tell yourself about what the event means, what it is about you personally, you think a lot of things, some of which make good sense, some of which are incredibly unrealistic. They make no sense whatsoever. And I'll give you an example of that in a moment. And I hold up a pen. And I say, now, if I drop this pen, if I let go of it, it's going to hit the carpet. You look at me and you say, well, I don't believe that. I don't think it's going to hit the carpet. And I say, well, you can think what you want, but your thinking is wrong. Because realistically, this pen is going to hit the carpet if I let it go. Well, I just don't think that. I just don't feel it is. I say, well, I think you better take a look at your thinking, because your thinking is causing you all kinds of feeling problems. Had a woman come into my office many years ago. Her husband had an adulterous relationship on her with a young woman. The session was kind of an emergency session. She was with me for about 3 hours because she was talking suicide. She was so distraught. She was talking suicide. Now one might think, what was it that she was near the edge like this? And you'd say, well, obviously, her husband had an adulterous relationship. I hate calling it an affair. I don't call it an affair. It makes it sound like, oh, isn't that fluffy? Just kind of this little, like a state festival. He had an affair. And she was shook. Of course she was shook. Came out of the blue. I mean, there's no way she saw this coming. So, right. Rocked her world. Got that. She was also thinking if I'm going to be a single mom, it's going to be tough. I got kids. How am I going to juggle my job, and she was a professional woman, my job, and also being a single mom raising my kids? Again, another realistic thinking, very realistic. She said, we've been married a while, nearly 20 years. I don't want to be single. I geared everything in my life towards heading into old age with a partner. I don't want to be single. Again, very realistic. Now, one might say, well, there you have it. That's what was pushing her to the edge of ending her life. No, it wasn't. She was telling herself 3 other things, all of which were as unrealistic as someone saying, I don't believe you're going to drop that pen and it's going to hit the ground. She said, it was my fault. If I'd have been a better wife, he would never have done this. Now, this was not a woman who was a bad wife. Not at all. I know this. I knew this woman. This is not a woman who, she was just a witch to live with, and part of it is he just couldn't take it anymore. And no. She was just a faithful mom, wife. No, this was him. This was his thing. So that was crazy. Then she said, I've lost the only person I can ever love. That's it. My life is really done. Life's done. And then she said, and she was, I forget exactly what religious group she was associated with, but one of the teachings, as she shared it with me, I think she was mistaken, but one of the teachings was, if she gets a divorce, she's bound for hell. Think about this. She failed in the past. Her future's going to be miserable. And when she dies, no relief. She's in hell. Now, if you believe that, those 3 things, it's not a shocker that you're thinking of ending your life now. It was those 3 notions that were pushing her to the edge of suicide. Now, what did we do during those 3 hours? Well, first of all, we challenged and attacked and looked at the reality of those 3 notions. But that's what was doing it. And those 3 notions were close to as unrealistic as saying, I don't think the pen is going to hit the ground if you leave it, if you let it go. Part of people's distress is that they do not look at what they're thinking, what they're believing, and challenge it if it's crazy. And by crazy, I don't mean psychotic. I mean unrealistic, illogical, nonsense. Happens all the time. Somebody comes into my office and makes an incredibly foolish move because of circumstances. And then they just say, I'm a wretched, horrible, evil person. Well, no, wait a minute. You made a bad move here. Okay? And it's not even necessarily an immorally bad move. It was just a dumb move, perhaps. And their attitude was, I'll never get over it because I'm just wretched. Just wretched. Well, okay, if you're going to tell yourself that, no wonder you're feeling so bad. Well, I can't help it. That's just the way I feel. No, you can help it. Because you've got to look at the way you're thinking. People don't realize the connection between thought and feeling. The whole series of therapies are based upon this, which is we got to look at how you are interpreting an event, whatever it might be. For example, if somebody comes into my office and they are grieving, they've lost a loved one. Now, grief in and of itself is probably one of the most powerful, if the most powerful emotion you can experience, and most people underestimate its potency. Now, grief is tough enough to move through. It takes time. But if they're piling wrong perceptions on top of that grief. For example, well, I just wish I could have been a better person. Well, we can all be better people, all right? Or something like, I did something when we were married for 6 years, and I apologized, we reconciled, and we went on. But I wonder how much that ate away at him. So when you start telling yourself all these kinds of things, no wonder you feel so bad. It's bad enough to have grief. But when you have these notions in your head that are very questionable, at best they're questionable, at worst they're nonsense, and you accept them, you think they're reality. They are as unreal as believing if I drop that pen, it's not going to hit the ground. If I say to someone, you see that wall there? That wall's green, which is the color of my office. The wall's green. And they say, no, it isn't. The wall's blue. No, it's green. Well, I just think it's blue. You can think it's blue, but it's green. Your thinking is wrong. Your perception is off. Well, that's just the way I think. Okay. Are you prepared to be wrong? Now, that's an extreme example, but that's what we do every day in our lives. We do not challenge and question the way we're thinking because we think our feelings just happen. Well, if somebody says something like that to me, you just get angry. That's just the way it is. No. You're getting angry because you're telling yourself a whole bunch of things about them saying that to you. I don't deserve that. He shouldn't have said it. I don't do that to him. It's not true. You're telling yourself all those things. Rather than simply saying, I can't stop what somebody's going to say to me. The only thing I have to worry about is whether it's true or not. If it's not true, if it's just mean-spirited, I can't do much about it. It's been said. But if you dwell on it and you tell yourself all kinds of things that aren't true, you're going to feel bad for days and not just for an hour like you should have been. Thoughts, they're potent. They provoke feelings. What we have to do is to check those thoughts, see if they make sense. Be back with your e-persons.
We don't have a lot of time on this earth. We weren't meant to spend it this way.
The doctor is in.
What can I say? I'm thrilled.
Dr. Ray, at your age, do you have social media? I do. I do have. You can follow me if you want to follow me. The bulletin board at Kroger's and my chart. You have two places to follow me. Okay, I do. I have Instagram and Facebook page and a YouTube, and my son handles all that. Hello, Dr. Ray. Hope you're doing well. I've written to you before about my 7-year-old regarding him occasionally saying he wants bad things to happen to him. An example would be if he gets a small hurt, a scrape, or something outside, he'll say with a big smile on his face, I want to get hurt. Well, as long as he's smiling. Okay, well, you can want to get hurt, but it hurts. I guess. So part of it would be for me when he says something like that, I would wonder two things. One, does he think it's funny? And that's just his odd little eccentric way of doing something like that. Or somehow has he gotten cues from mom that this is a good way to get a rise out of her or some kind of reaction. He will also say very self-deprecating things if he gets put in time out. or if we have to correct him. I'm a bad boy. I want to get in trouble. Okay. Well, I'm sure you've probably said, Mom, you're not a bad boy, but you did get in trouble. I think part of it is it's scary when you impute too much meaning to it. He's 7 years old. The vast majority of time when kids say this, it has no psychological meaning other than I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I wish I wouldn't have done it, and geez, I'm just a bad person. Now, I've often wrestled with this whole idea of, you see this a lot with expert types who give advice. They tell you to tell your child, you may have done, again, and they don't like using bad and wrong, but I'm just going to use these words anyway. They don't like using value language. You may have done something foolish, son, but you're not a foolish person. Now, see, we say stuff like that. Now, the most sophisticated philosophers have debated what that means. Can we be otherwise than our behavior? Okay? So we're telling a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old, well, make the differentiation between doing foolish things and being a foolish person. I mean, it sounds good coming out of our mouth, and it is true. That it is. But I think it comforts us more than it comforts the kid, because they really don't understand what that means. But we feel good about it. All right. She says, he's an extremely, and she capitalizes extremely. So if I were to read this as it should be read, I would read, he's an extremely sensitive little guy. This year at school, his first grade teacher has not been a good fit for him. Unfortunately, she's very impatient with small children. And she uses a clip system. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. That penalizes for small, she has super small infractions. If he gets a clip moved at school, okay, so it must be some kind of thing where the clip is hanging or it's on a board or something and it slides toward whatever, slides towards trouble, whatever. You get 3, I don't know how many warnings they get. That's the other thing too. I mean, it may not be a bad system if she's giving him 3 warnings a day. Actually, it's kind of a weak system. If he gets a clip, it sets him off for the rest of the day in talking about how bad he is, that no one likes him, etc. Long story short, Dr. Ray, we have started to worry that this is more than, quote, attention getting. And we're curious about your take. I'm not sure it's attention getting as much as a little bit related to my opening monologue. He's misinterpreting it. He's seeing that if he does bad things, he's terrible. Now, that's immature thinking. And hopefully he will outgrow this as he becomes a little more sophisticated. But what you could do, Mom, is you could say, you know what, son? You're not that way. And I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to hear you putting down someone I love like I do. Now, enough of that. And if I can't stop you, I'm going to let you sit on the steps to cool down and think about it. And when you're ready to tell me why you're not a bad person, I'll let you get up. Do that. In other words, what you're going to do is you're not going to get shook by it. You're going to say, okay. Now, here's why Mom's getting shook. She's worried about what it means. It's psychological. There's something going on, percolating. Well, I think what it means is you got a sensitive little kid, and that's how he interprets this stuff. It doesn't mean he's going to interpret it this way when he's 10, but he interprets it this way now. And when he's 14, he's probably going to think you're the one that's bad, not him. That said, do you think we should get him psychological testing at this point? Why? What would you uncover? For example, personality testing is weak as it is, and it's particularly weak with 7-year-olds. So let's say that you have a psychologist write a report up for you, and it says, yeah, he's a sensitive little guy, he's prone to misinterpretation, and he also tends to put himself down, and he has a weak self-image. Okay, now what? What are you going to do? Well, maybe we shouldn't discipline him, or maybe we should talk with him more. Well, you could talk with him more, but I would never give up on the discipline, that's for sure. That's a bad move. Now, this is critical. This line right here is the critical line. This is an extremely perplexing situation for us. Well, Mom, I want to tell you, it's not perplexing. The vast, vast, vast majority of kids who do this, there's nothing more threatening about it. It's just for the moment, I feel miserable, and I'm going to say, I'm glad I got punished. I'm glad I got hurt. Nobody likes me because I'm the worst kid in the class. And then she says this. 99% of the time, he is a super happy little boy. Well, that would have been my next question. I would say, what's he like most of the time? Look at the overall appearance. So this only happens when he's either disciplined or he gets frustrated about something. And that seems to be his style. That's the first thing he goes to. Now, if it were me, I'd say, look, I don't want to hear that kind of talk anymore, son. It's not true. And I don't want you telling yourself that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to ask you to stop it. But Dr. Ray, okay, so he stops it, but he still thinks it. Well, you can't stop what he's thinking. But you can stop what he's saying because saying feeds thinking. At times it seems that saying things in regards to him wanting to get hurt has been used as a way. Oh, Mom, here it is. Has been used as a way to get a strong reaction out of us. There it is. Back in the beginning of this letter, I said, is he trying to get a reaction out of Mom and Dad because they seem to be nervous about this kind of stuff? We try so hard to create a very loving home for our kids. So George isn't hearing anything from us about how he's a bad boy. Well, she says, do you have any thoughts or directions on this problem? I gave you some. I'll close it up with this. Yeah, this seems to be his style. There's probably a component of he knows his parents are a little nervous about all this, and so they're reacting. And I think if you tell him, you know what, George, this is a bad habit to get into, you saying these kinds of things. I really don't want to hear this anymore because you know what? You're talking about somebody I love. And I don't want you out. That would be like calling somebody else names and putting them down. And I don't want you to do that. Got to take a kind of laid-back approach to it and let him know, George, enough of this. Your original question here was, how do I tell my family? Well, you tell them.
This is wonderful advice.
I joined one of those self-help support groups for parents who talk too much. Yeah, it's called On and On and On. Dr. Ray Guarendi here, program Doctor is in ePerson Monday. Let's see what we got here. This ePerson is occasion for a little primer on something called agoraphobia. Literally, fear of the marketplace. Agora in Greek is marketplace. Phobia is fear. I have a friend who married a man who's been suffering from anxiety so bad that he has not left his parents' farm for close to 3 years. Now, I'm going to assume they live on that farm. She married him, so apparently they're living on the parents' farm, either in the farmhouse or it's been bequeathed to them. I don't know the details there. He has seen only teledocs because he feels he's unable to ride in a car. Very difficult to, how should I put this, do psychotherapy of some type for this kind of extensive fear. This kind of fear has to be dealt with, in many respects, behaviorally. He's being treated for thyroid problems, but progress is slow to non-existent. Now, is it hyperthyroid or hypothyroid? Hyperthyroid will create a kind of an anxious state. It can. And that may have been what happened that set all this in motion. I can't know. What can be done? What kind of advice should they seek? Well, it's time for, as I said, a little primer on what's called agoraphobia. In the 80s, agoraphobia was the media diagnosis. It was big. It was all over the place. It was in women's magazines. It was the disorder of the age there. People whose anxiety was so intense about so many things that they really were housebound. I've had clients like this. They're housebound. What typically happens is that there's usually an anxious episode. Maybe it's a panic attack somewhere. And the person who experiences the panic attack fears that it's going to happen again, perhaps in the same place. So they're going to avoid that place. But then they worried about it happening in other places. They start to feel anxious about being anxious. And as it spreads, because anxiety does have a tendency to generalize, it goes to more places. It can get very general. There is a diagnosis called generalized anxiety disorder, GAD. And because it gets severe, it can get very severe, the only safe place is at home. Any place else has the potential to provoke an anxiety reaction. In a case like this, first thing you got to do is a little instruction. You got to teach the person, and hopefully they'll accept it, that if they have a physical all clear, their anxiety is anxiety. It's not going to hurt them. It's an unpleasant feeling, but it's not going to hurt them. And anxiety is more scary if you're afraid of it. Now, that sounds dumb, doesn't it? But what it means is, if you don't know what the anxiety means, this is a horrible experience. This is horrible. What's wrong with me? I don't know what's going on with me. Am I having a heart attack? Oh gosh, I don't know. Am I going to faint? What is with, I don't want to fall apart. You do that, and you really juice up the anxiety. Heavy. So, first thing you got to do is you got to convince him, if you can, that his anxiety isn't going to hurt him if he ventures out. Now, secondly, he may say, well, there ain't no way I'm going to venture out, say, to church or to some party or a gathering or a restaurant or a store. Not happening. I'll just panic, and it'll be unbearable. I won't do it. So let's break it up into steps. Can you walk around in the land that you own there? Can you walk out toward the street and you still keep the farmhouse in sight? Can you do that until you get to the point where that doesn't bother you at all anymore? And then what if you can get in a car and go a short distance with your wife as your anxiety protector until you can handle that? Then you head someplace further out. In other words, you break it up into little steps. And with each step repeated, the anxiety will dissipate because you'll find out nothing awful, terrible is going to happen to me. I'm not going to unravel and fall apart psychologically. But because people give so much, and this goes back to my opening monologue, wrong meaning to the anxiety. I'm having a heart attack. No, you're not. You've already been checked. You're not. So that's like saying, well, the pen is not going to hit the ground if you let it go. Yes, it is. Well, I think it's not. Well, you're wrong. And same thing about, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to go crazy. No, you're not. Anxiety doesn't make you crazy. I'm going to do something stupid. No, anxiety makes you feel bad. It don't make you act bad. So all these thoughts that are percolating about this anxiety that is keeping him house farm bound are wrong. He doesn't know that. He thinks they're accurate. He thinks they're as accurate as if I drop the pen, it's not going to hit the ground. It is going to hit the ground. Well, I don't think it is. Well, then you're wrong. Agoraphobia is an extreme generalized anxiety. It gains momentum. The person's convinced they can't tolerate feeling that way. Yes, they can. It's unpleasant. You don't understand. You don't understand. I breathe really, really hard and my heart races and I sweat. Okay. So how come when you exert yourself physically in a sporting event or something like that and you breathe really hard and your heart races really, really fast and you sweat, doesn't bother you then? Well, that's different. I'm not threatened. Well, you're not threatened by walking out of a farmhouse either. Yes, I am. The feeling's horrible. Shouldn't be there. But you're still not in any danger. There's nothing going on. Your body's just acting up because your mind is telling it. Act up, act up, act up. Danger, danger, SOS, SOS. And your dumb body goes, okay, yep, I'll just act scared. And that's what happens. And pretty soon, he's been there 3 years in that house now. He locked himself in pretty good, literally and figuratively. So because of that, that anxiety has just totally stripped him of normal, everyday freedoms. And it will, as long as he continues to allow it. As long as he believes there is no way to fix this. And it's a funny sort of thing. As distressing as anxiety can be, it is really one of the easier things to remedy. It truly is. Once you understand that you're not in any danger, once you understand that you're not going to go goofy, once you understand that this is an extremely unpleasant feeling that will go away if you stay in the situation, it will go away and you will retrain your body. But he hasn't come to that point yet. I'm hoping that the teletherapy people that he's with are telling him that.
All the advice, none of the bills. Come in. The doctor is in.
I like this quote from C.S. Lewis. We might think that God wanted simply obedience to a set of rules, whereas he really wants people of a particular sort. Yeah, you can see that in our Lord as he spoke rather vehemently and harshly to the religious leaders because they followed those sets of rules. A lot of the ones they made up too. They thought they were very holy because they were following the set of rules. And there was something about their motive. There was something about their overall persona, their spirit, if you will, that our Lord said, you're way off. Once people of a particular sort, and I think one of those sorts is kind of a recognition of one's own sinfulness and a recognition of God's love in spite of all that. Dr. Ray, my family is going to visit my husband's mother next week. Excuse me, for a few days. I love my husband's family, but my mother-in-law can be very negative. She and her husband spent a week with us at Christmas. By the end of the week, I was so worn down with her negativity that it just detracted from a festive time. I cannot find a subject about which she has something nice to say. Everyone around us picks up on this, and they join in, which apparently she's meaning that they parallel her negativity. They talk the same kind of negativity that she's stimulated. How do I not let such an attitude affect what should be an otherwise happy visit? We don't get to see her very often. But I dread our visits. Okay, well, let's talk about this. This is one of those situations that you haven't accepted what she's like. I know you're thinking, yes, I have. I know what she's like. I know acutely what she's like. That's why I have a hard time with her. No, you haven't. Because you want her to be different. She's not. As you say, she's extremely negative, and it sounds like if you're that negative, you got to be an unhappy individual. And you try in vain to bring up nice, joyful, positive subjects, and she twists them all over the place. So my suggestion would be, future visits with her, you go in armed with the mindset that this is who she is. This is how she talks. This is how she's always talked as long as you've known her. This is how she talks now. This is how she will probably always talk until the day she leaves this earth. Once you accept that, she can be as negative as she wants. You don't have to absorb it. But Dr. Ray, that kind of negativity really bothers me. Well, it bothers you because you don't want it to be. I want to be happy on Christmas. You can be happy on Christmas. You don't have to let her negativity bring you down. You don't understand, Dr. Ray. It's relentless. Are you saying that you're at her mercy? In one of my books, I talk about close the book. Now, close the book, by that I mean, don't close my book. Come on, keep reading. I mean, you get to the point where you no longer spend much agonizing, thinking, feeling time over the way someone is. She's negative. You're going to close the book on that chapter. She's negative. Nothing's going to change. She probably doesn't even realize she's negative. She probably thinks she's got the right to be negative. She probably thinks it's good to be negative. All it's doing to you is making you not enjoy the rest of the family and to dread visits. And probably your husband has to listen to you all the way home talking about her. If you can accept, and I mean accept now, not just think, I know she's negative. I know that, Dr. Ray, but the feeling gets to me. No, I'm talking you truly accept and believe that this is the way she is and you can't do anything about it. It will not get to you like it does. You recognize it. That's how she approaches life. Hey, if you got a good husband, you got to be grateful. He navigated that and he turned out okay. He's not negative. At least you didn't say he was. And the rest of the family seems to be okay. At least what you're saying, you love being with them. Your visits are time limited. Whether it's Christmas, you say we visit them. They spend a week with us at Christmas. That must mean they live somewhat far away to spend a whole week with you, obviously. So given that, your visits are time limited. You can sort of float with anybody if you know it's time limited. People get in marriages that are not time limited. I mean, they're indefinite and they're just miserable because the other person still gets to them and they haven't gotten to the point where they start to brace themselves, not letting this other person get to them with the crazy things they say, the put down things they say. But your mother-in-law is just negative. It's who she is. And I would also say, don't try to raise her mood. Well, you know, I mean, I'm sure she meant well. She was trying, you know, I know you didn't like the Christmas lights this year, but I thought they were beautiful. Don't exhaust yourself. If you have to, just let her go on and keep talking to yourself silently. What do I expect? It's the way she is. It's the way she's going to be. What do I expect? Someone can be really negative around you, and it doesn't have to affect you like you think it automatically will. Negative people just bring me down. They don't. I know this is going to sound real psychological, but you bring yourself down about them. There isn't anything inherently in their negativity that infuses your brain and says, okay, feel miserable. No, you have to upset yourself over the fact that they're that negative. Maybe it would help to feel sorry for her. Think about it. She's that negative. She's got to be that miserable. You can go home. You don't have to be around her. You visit her twice a year. She's with herself every day. Can you imagine what that's like? That's what I would suggest there. This is Dr. Ray. Thank you for joining me here. Got a few more minutes. Every once in a while I get kind of a just a simple generic question about things of psychology or emotions or moods. This one, Pascal once said, kind words don't cost much, yet they accomplish much. Putting this into practice would go a long way, Dr. Ray, in building and repairing relationships. What are your thoughts? I've spoken, again, in one of my books about what I call the law of social entropy. The law of entropy is a physics law. It's one of the major physics laws. Is it the first? I think it might be the first law of physics. Everything is headed toward decay, basically, very simply put. That means, iron rusts, your body's age. You let your house sit there for, say, a century, and when you come back 100 years from now, it's going to be just kind of a crumbled up bunch of rubble. Maybe so totally grown over you can't even see it. The sun, given enough time, is going to burn itself out. It really will. Nuclear fusion will stop, and it'll collapse into a neutron star or even a black hole. The universe, if it goes on long enough, will simply die a heat death. Everything will just kind of burn out. The law of social entropy says that relationships, if you don't work against them, can decay. For example, if you don't do strength training, your muscles at age 60 and 70 are going to be dramatically weaker than what they were when you were 30, whether you're a guy or a girl. Going to decay. So you got to actively do something to not let that happen, at least at that pace. They're going to decay, but you can really, really slow it down. Law of social entropy says that I get sloppy and lazy in relationships, particularly those that are close to me. My spouse, my children. I don't compliment my spouse like I used to. When we first started dating, you compliment a lot, and do you still compliment as much? What about your manners? I bet your manners at one time were much better. They were probably as good as the manners you want from a 5-year-old. But in a marriage, sometimes we don't even use 5-year-old manners. We don't even say please and thank you at all. Sorry. That's a good thing to say, and maybe you were more likely to say it back in the beginning of the relationship, but now they're getting fewer and farther between, and that's not because you're becoming easier to live with. And there may not necessarily be ill will in the relationship. It might not be a hostile relationship. It's just getting lazy. It's getting sloppy. You don't compliment like you used to. Not necessarily because you don't think of it. Not necessarily because you don't want to, but because you don't think of it. Maybe you don't use a pleasant tone of voice as much or ask as nicely, not because you're feeling mean, but because it takes a little effort. It takes a little effort to phrase it in a nice way or to use a good tone. So, right, it is true. Kind words don't cost much. And there's a great line that I heard once from Jim Dobson. Not personally, I heard it from his show. He said, we don't act so much in line with what people think of us. We act more in line with what we think they think of us. If somebody says to you, you know, you're one of the most even-tempered people I know. You're always just so upbeat. Are you going to put a little more effort into being upbeat around them because you think they think that? Or you're always giving compliments. You know that I really like that about you. You're free with compliments. Not in a flattering, fulsome way, but just because you notice good things about people. When you're around that person, are you more or less likely to be free with the compliments? You're going to be more likely. Why? Because you think that's what they think of you. It's the same thing when you compliment your spouse. If your spouse thinks that's what you think of them, they're more likely to act in accordance with what you think. You know what, honey? You are always, always so affectionate with the kids. Now, you notice your spouse notices that. It's going to make you more affectionate with the kids? Probably. Kind words do the same thing. I think Pascal's onto something. They don't take much. But they can fade. They can fade in a relationship. You know, it said familiarity breeds contempt. I don't think that's so necessarily true. I think familiarity can breed laziness, apathy, indifference. More likely. All right. Got to run. Thank you for joining me on this E-Person Money. I'm Dr. Ray. Good Lord permitting, let's talk to you tomorrow where we can interface, inter-ear. Walk with God. Don't get lazy on that one.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.